Hello, welcome to this week's episode of our looking back on previous season of NFL football. This week we're going to be going over the Pittsburgh Steelers. So let's just get right into it, shall we? So the team went 10-7 last season and had a pretty embarrassing loss against the Texans in the wild card round of the playoffs. It takes something to lose in a game like that, in my opinion. I, along with most people, predicted that they were going to go 9-8, and they ended up 10-7. So that's about average. That's about what people expected them to do. We're also going to be going over some of the key games from last season, any major injuries that they had that affected their season, some key trades and player departures that happened. We're also going to just take a look at what could happen next season based on how their draft went, how they handled free agency, and if we think they can potentially bounce back from last year, or potentially if this year is worse, bounce back from it without any major changes to the roster or coaching staff. They had kind of a weird season last year, in my opinion, where basically if they were going up against a really good team or just a good team, it was kind of a coin toss as to where they were going to win or not against them. They were kind of given a blessing in both their games against the Ravens by just how many injuries that team had. Though they still barely made it to the playoffs and only got in because they beat the Ravens in week 18. Speaking of playoffs, like I mentioned earlier, they lost to the Texans in the first round in some pretty a pretty embarrassing game, if you ask me, because Stroud turned over or threw picks so many times within that game that it was honestly kind of surprising to me that the Steelers did not win. Some like the main key injury they had last year, which I do think affected their playoffs, is that T.J. Watt missed a lot of games due to a lung injury and surgery, specifically in the later part of the season and through the playoffs. Would it have helped them in the game against the Texans? I don't really know, but it's always fun to speculate. They traded away Pickens in the offseason and they signed Metcalf, and I believe that trade definitely affected their season. Pickens obviously went to the Cowboys and did, in my opinion, did all right there. 6'4", 229 for DK Metcalf. Not bad. He's a pretty good receiver. Now, getting on to this upcoming season, you to address the sort of elephant in the room about Mike Tomlin departing from the Steelers after a pretty long tenure there. In my opinion, leaves up a lot of questions about what the team is going to look like and how they're going to adapt to a new coach and that coach's new style, and just a lot of it's all kind of up in the air at this point. Also looking forward to next season. Let's talk about the draft. It did pretty all right. I'd probably give them a B rating on their draft. It wasn't the best, but it could have definitely been a lot worse. They did draft a second QB as they did not re-sign Aaron Rodgers for a second season. So that's going to be something to really look out for, in that Will Howard is going to be their starting quarterback, and he didn't play a full game at all last year, hardly at all. I don't even think he played at all last year. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with two rookie quarterbacks and new coaching. Do I think they can potentially bounce back from their kind of mediocre year last year? I think maybe. I know that's not much of an answer, but like I said, new coach, a lot of new players. It's very hard to guess what's going to happen when we haven't seen anything out of a lot of the key figures within a franchise currently. What needs to change? Obviously, we did have Mike McCarthy come in, Pittsburgh native, I believe. We also had, like I said, Rogers left, Gainwell, who left for Tampa Bay, which that's another key loss right there. Going back to draft, they drafted Allard, and while I think it was an odd pick, he definitely does have potential. They reached it quite a few times, and I do think the Eagles definitely stole their draft prospect by trading up to get that pick. It's all very up in the air with new coaching and new players. a decent draft. They did pretty good with the free agency trades that they had. Kind of about all that I really have overall. I see the Steelers going probably 9-8 again next season. They might go 11-6. That's a possibility, but they also might just have a completely awful season because everything is very unknown about this team because it's very new and very fresh for Pittsburgh. So we'll see. I'm thinking 9-8. But anyway, this has been Planet Football's retrospective look on the Pittsburgh Steelers 2025 season and potential look at their 2026 season.